Churches and civil groups are in danger of being forced to tear down their information highway signs. Some of these signs have stood for decades. The current law states that religious and civic groups can no longer have signs larger than 8 square feet. That's 2 foot by 4 foot. However, free coffee signs in the same law is unlimited in size. My amendment would allow churches and civic organizations to keep their signs that are larger than 8 square feet. This is a reasonable amendment. It would be beneficial to the safety and the traveling public and allow our federal government to focus its resources on more critical infrastructure uses. We need to be focusing on repairing our roads and bridges, not tearing down church signs. I reserve the balance of my time.
Balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, I seek the time in opposition.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chairman, this amendment would suspend enforcement of rules governing the size of billboards for religious organizations and service clubs. These rules have been in place for a long time, since 1975. As I understand it, the gentleman is seeking to increase the allowable size of billboards for religious organizations and service clubs from 8 square feet to 32 square feet. This isn't the appropriate place to deal with this issue. We've barely heard of it before it was offered. We certainly haven't had extensive deliberations. Haven't heard from state authorities, local authorities, people who have a stake in this. It needs to be reviewed and debated within the context of the Surface Transportation Authorization. The authorizing committees are in the midst of working on a new authorization bill right now, and that's where I would suggest the gentleman might want to take his concerns. This is not the place here tonight, and I urge colleagues to reject this amendment. And I yield back.
The gentleman from North Carolina yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to my colleague from Oklahoma.
The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise today to give my very strong support to this amendment offered by my colleague from Oklahoma. The federal government creates a regulation. That regulation says that if you're a church, or if you're a civic group, or if you're some kind of community organization, you are limited in the size of your sign to 8 square feet, 2 feet by 4 feet. However, if you're a billboard company, you can have 25 feet by 60 feet. This is a discrimination against churches and civic groups that I think is inappropriate. And I would also say that the state of Oklahoma has weighed in. The state of Oklahoma would like to regulate the signs in the state of Oklahoma, and I think that is absolutely not only appropriate, but I think it is constitutional that the state have the right to regulate the signs in its own state. And here's the sad part that I'd like to let people know and understand. If the state of Oklahoma chooses not to enforce this federal regulation that is discriminatory, then the state of Oklahoma risks losing 10% of its federal funding for roads. This is the federal government using Oklahoma taxpayer dollars against the state of Oklahoma. It is federal bullying. This amendment offered by my colleague from Oklahoma is a good amendment. I fully support it, and I highly recommend my colleagues support it. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Our churches and our civic organizations have better ways to spend their limited resources than tearing down signs. Our states have better more time on their hands to be looking at our roads and bridges if they didn't have to go out and enforce a law that our state doesn't even want. If we could simply be focusing on the important issues like our roads and our bridges, not wasting federal dollars and state dollars on enforcing an out-of-date law, this wouldn't even simply be an issue. I would urge my colleagues to support this common sense amendment, and I yield back.
The gentleman from Oklahoma yields.